Hey everybody, it's Mystic Mark here, and I'm here with Heidi from Divine Charts and my twin brother Mike. And this is going to be a session. We're going to continue the discussion that I started recently on my video about disclosure. I did a 3-card tarot poll, just trying to get some additional insights on what's going on right now in the United States when it comes to extraterrestrial disclosure, and hoping that the government's finally going to share with us the truth, which I won't hold my breath for. But basically, the three of us are just going to do a deep dive here and try to make sense of it all. Heidi is an astrologer, so she's going to be able to provide some insights with that later on down in the conversation. So I'm really excited to find out what she has cooking over there. But basically, so United States Congress, they're putting out this order that they're going to be making public this declassified report, which is going to be talking about all of these instances of UFOs or UAPs, depending on who you ask. And what's interesting to me is this has been going on for quite a while now, a couple of years. And there's reports where, Hornet pilots were seeing basically UFOs every day on the eastern seaboard. San Diego as well, over on the West Coast. So you got this scenario where you got all these fighter pilots, these very educated military men, very respected. These guys aren't crazy. This is not just some like Joe Schmo living out in the woods in West Virginia getting abducted. These are highly intelligent people who basically have been seeing stuff every day while flying in their fighter jets. So I think the whole thing is fascinating. But again, even though they're talking about this report, I don't even know if I'm going to believe them, no matter what they say, because they're already doing damage control on the internet. You can go look it up and see videos of these NASA scientists and these Pentagon officials basically being very careful with their words and doing their best to deflect saying the actual words that extraterrestrials are here. So, my brother Mike here, we've been debating this topic basically our whole lives. And it's really, really cool to see this finally becoming an actual thing. But I don't know. How do you feel, Mike? Do you think that they're actually going to tell us the truth here?
You're going to tell us enough to keep everybody quiet. I think by June 25th, it'll be just enough to kind of satisfy people's needs for the moment. But that's about it. I think they're going to continue to lie. So.
Well, it's all about national security, right? They only care about national security, maintaining power. There's a lot of information that suggests that, there's going to be a false flag event in the near future. And a false flag event is basically what the government wants us to believe. They want us to, if you look at media, like, movies, TV, all these things over the years, they're trying to portray extraterrestrials as this like monster that's like lurking and it's waiting to take over Earth. It's waiting to enslave humanity. I don't buy it. And there's even a lot of people in the media today, like, you got guys like David Icke, David Wilcock. They're so hell-bent on talking about the reptilians and all these evil forces that are going to be that are currently enslaving us and taking us over. But I don't know. I like to focus my energies more on believing that the ETs are actually here to help us. What do you think about that, Heidi?
I'm wondering if there's going to be some type of civilian who is very skilled at cinematography who's going to catch something that can't be debunked, and then they're going to have to fess up. I really think that in situations like this, I think that citizens, and that's what I'm saying in the astrology, is that they're going to kind of have to be forced to confirm it. But or what do they say? I'm not going to confirm or deny. Isn't that what they say? You know what I mean? But I think that they don't have much to gain by sharing the wealth of knowledge that they have. I think that it's going to take citizens who are highly intelligent, highly skilled in this, to bring in experts. And I think that's where the validation is going to come, because in reality, after everything we've been through with politics, how many people believe politicians these days, right?
It's fake news. Like, I know it's a term that's been coined in recent years, but it's true. Fake news travels 85% faster than actual real news.
Yeah, so I think Yeah, I think that even if they do come out, you're still going to have non-believers, or they're going to say, well, they're withholding information or they doctored something. I don't think that relying on the government is going to get everybody on board. I think people having an authentic experience is what gets them on board. And I think most people don't trust politicians. So we can't look there.
I'm glad you're saying this, Heidi, because I 1,000% agree with you. If we're going to depend on the government to tell us the truth about this, then we're going to be waiting a long time, right?
Yeah.
They're constantly lying to us to kind of keep us where we are, and they want to prevent pandemonium and mass hysteria because they know that the minute they acknowledge alien life, it basically throws religion right out the window in many cases.
Right. And the other thing is that government is there to maintain power. If they have to acknowledge that there is another, species that is interstellar, not from this realm, that they don't really understand, they are relinquishing some type of power, that there could be something out there that they don't understand and don't have control over. Yeah. Right. So to me, I don't think we're ever going to get legitimate answers, because they would have to relinquish control and they'd have to relinquish power, which I don't think most governments have the consciousness to do, right? Because they don't trust the masses, then they don't want to lose control.
Yeah, and it's the technology too, right? They don't want to lose control of the technology because, again, is this conspiracy theory time? I got my tinfoil hat on, but supposedly, and I do believe this, they've been suppressing technology from the rest of us for a long time. I mean, it started, the Germans basically were able to recreate the technology to use it in the fighter jet technology and propulsion engines and all that stuff. And then eventually, as the story goes, when the United States finally got a lot of those scientists at the end of World War II, or actually before that, they were able to develop it and weaponize it, right? So other countries are probably using the technology for traveling and movement of vehicles, planes, whatnot. But United States was like, screw it, let's build an atomic weapon and wipe out entire cities and countries.
But I think there also could be, if they do indeed have some advanced technology, how do they share it with the public when they probably don't really understand it to its depth, right? How do you explain something you truly don't understand? You're just like a kindergartner with a firecracker screwing around.
Well, they understand it to a certain level, because another thing, again, a lot of these things that I'm saying, I don't have personal verification for, but there seems to be some validity to it. And like you're saying, they don't understand the technology, which I believe to be completely true also, but they understand it enough where they've been able to basically create UFOs themselves. So the United States government has been notorious for actually making their own UFOs, or their version of UFOs, experimenting with technologies. And they go around testing these planes out, and then people in their little hometown see some crazy shit flying over their head and they're freaking out and they think it's aliens. And they should, because it's the government playing with technology that, none of us know about. So of course we're going to think it's aliens. And I think a lot of the UFO sightings that people have seen in the United States especially, and I'm not doubting that there's other countries doing the same thing, but the United States, I feel there's definitely a history of them playing with crafts. I mean, everybody's seen that picture of Nazi Germany, and they had that bell-shaped craft with a big swastika on the side of it. I mean, that right there is evidence to me that the Germans were doing that. They were making crafts, and I'll definitely share it in this video for sure.
Wow.
But there's like a bell-shaped UFO, and it's got a big swastika on the side of it. So that's evidence to me that our governments are very well aware. They've somehow been able to get their hands on a UFO that's crashed or something along the lines. I don't know how they got it. But it's interesting.
Wild. It's interesting you bring up wartime, because I know in history, this may sound terrible, but scientists and medical doctors use that as a time to advance medical understanding and scientific understanding, because during wartime there are no rules for atrocities. So I believe that the Nazis were doing experiments, right, on individuals like in the camps.
Oh yeah.
So why would they not, if they had some advanced technology, take that opportunity to use it? That's what I think that most governments would use an advanced technology for, would be to become more powerful with their military strength. Don't you guys think?
Sure. The weapons. I mean,
Yeah.
you could
Well,
do so much.
You could refer back to Admiral Byrd when Operation High Jump, and they went down to Antarctica, and they were met with, you know, flying saucers apparently. So
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, that's when, so Operation High Jump is when United States sent down Admiral Byrd equipped with a whole fleet, a whole naval fleet, an insane amount of firepower. And they were supposedly going down there for some like cold weather exercises, but supposedly down in Antarctica, there was some kind of anomaly, whether it was a crashed ship or some kind of like doorway. I mean, some people believe that there's like a hole that leads into like the center of the earth, hollow earth theories and stuff
well,
like that.
they were actually attacked by flying saucers, from what I understand, from what Admiral Byrd
Yeah.
said
But
in his
they said they went down there and
memoirs
they
or
were
diary
met
or
with
something.
extreme force. Like they were attacked and like they came back and they were like
They lost.
puppies with their tails between their legs. Like it was pretty awful. But I think that just continues the question, like what's really down there in Antarctica. I think that's something that only the people who are in Antarctica really know for sure, especially those who are involved with those kinds of operations. But yeah, they were supposedly met with UFOs and all kinds of advanced technology and advanced beings. I've heard reports about like Nordics, which is like an alien race that looks very similar to us, and they kind of retreated into the center of the earth or something like that. So there's a lot of wild theories out there. But you're right, Heidi. The wartime is always a great excuse to experiment with not just technology, but with people.
But was he an admiral? What was he?
Oh yeah, he was wasn't he a Medal of Honor recipient, Mike?
He was the person they actually loosely based Indiana Jones off of. Like he was the most decorated military officer we had. Like they absolutely trusted him. And when he returned from that, they dismissed him as a kook, and they kind of told, you know, like made him look insane, more or less. So like no one trusted him or nothing.
Okay,
So,
but it was from his, like he was honest about it.
When he came back, he was forced to be quiet about it. And again, this is where things kind of get kind of hard to follow. But I don't understand if he kept a secret. Like you can see little things in interviews. He said certain things that got people's attention, almost like he was speaking in a code, if a little bit. But I think it's one of those things where he kept this information with him until his deathbed.
No, he was on a television show that was popular back in the 1950s, or it might have been in 40s or 50s. He was fairly older at the time, but he was interviewed about it on TV, and he was saying some questionable things. He was saying there was like a mountain of coal down there, and he was saying there was a whole nother continent. Like once you got to a certain point in Antarctica, there was a whole nother continent just past it.
So yeah, he said something about woolly mammoths. So he was flying over woolly mammoths and green vegetation.
Say again?
He was flying and they saw like woolly mammoths walking around, and they saw like green, like tropical climates and all kinds of crazy different things that you never expect to see in Antarctica.
He was saying something about running into some oasis at some point and whatnot, but he was saying like the mountain of coal was like enough coal for like the entire world to burn.
Okay. So I have a question. I can fathom seeing UFOs in the sky, seeing it. It makes more sense to me that because the universe is so vast, that something could come here and be in the sky than say going to Antarctica and there's like an inner earth. Like I can't, unless I were to see that and experience that, I still can't wrap my head around how that's even possible. So what is the difference? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm the skeptic. I feel like I'm the skeptic here, but yet if I look up and see it, I'm like, okay, that's plausible. But if I go to Antarctica and I do all this, I'm thinking I'm going to have to see this to truly believe it. Right?
Oh, it's definitely wild. But one thing you can know for sure that is fact, Antarctica has some very strict rules. If you were, let's say you were in an occupation that brought you down there, whether it was in the military or as a scientist or whatever, there are more countries working together. There's like some kind of treaty.
It's the only treaty that's never been broken. Every other treaty's been broken apparently, except for this one, and it's the only one that we've like honored for decades.
And all these countries are working together down there, and it's for research, right? And I think it's twofold. There's a part of this where I think that there is remnants of ancient civilizations down there, like maybe Atlantis, Lemuria, who knows? But they're talking about there's like pyramid structures. There's a bunch of stuff going on down there under the ice. And now that we're entering a time where the earth is heating, some of this ice is probably melting. And I've certainly heard stories of them finding UFOs, temples, all kinds of things. And then the biggest one is definitely the hole that's in the middle. But again, none of us know for sure unless you've been there. But if you study Linda Moulton Howe, she's a big time reporter. Is focused on ET topics, and she's had some incredible interviews with people, scientists and military alike, that have witnessed crazy shit going on down there in Antarctica. So I think it's worth exploring, and one day we will certainly know the truth there. But I'm glad you said one thing a minute ago, Heidi, that really got my attention. And you're talking about like being able to see something in the sky, right? I mean, if anybody who's interested in ETs and UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them, there's one thing that got my attention recently that I think everybody should know about. And Mike put me onto it. It was a documentary on Amazon Prime movies, and it was called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind by Dr. Stephen Greer. He was basically the main person in this documentary, and it blew me away. I didn't realize that there was a program out there or an organization that is focused on summoning UFOs, is essentially what they're doing. They're getting groups of people. They're creating a gigantic worldwide community where people stay connected using their phones, and they basically organize meetups where they all get together. And this is the other part that I really like. And this is like bridging the gap between aliens and metaphysics. They get together and they meditate. They meditate out in the woods, on a mountain, by a lake, somewhere quiet where there's no light pollution. Get a bunch of like-minded individuals, and you all meditate and set the attention that you're peace-loving. You just want, you're basically welcoming down. And they do these things called vectors, where how they do it is, Dr. Stephen Greer believes if you're going to ask a UFO or an alien or some kind of, intelligent life to come down and visit us, you got to show them where you are. So all throughout this documentary, and they have plenty of photographic evidence to back it up, which blew me away watching it. Some of this footage I've never seen anywhere. So it was really impressive. But they basically, how when you go on Google Earth and you find a location, you scroll in deeper, and then it comes closer, you keep going deeper and deeper, and it gets closer and closer until finally you're at your destination. Well, I believe that's what Dr. Stephen Greer developed, this process where you picture the Earth. And then you picture your continent, and then you get closer, and then the continent comes much closer. You see the states, like we're in Connecticut. So you keep going closer. Now you're in New England, Connecticut, and then you're in like New Haven, Connecticut, and then boom, you picture your house. So this it's called vectoring. And after they set all their intentions and they're coming together for peace, they all start doing that. They all start showing the ETs where they are. And it is crazy how much photographic evidence they have after they do these exercises. I mean, you just got to watch the documentary to see it for yourself. There's this one part where it looks like a sun. It looks like the sun is setting. Everybody's on the beach with the sun is setting. But what you don't know, or what you do find out, is in the video, it was pitch black when they were out there. But it looks at first like the sun setting. And then a second one appears right next to it. And there's two of them. I mean, that's just one of many instances in the show where it sounds like they successfully summoned a UFO or something. So this is a program called CE5, and it's developed by Dr. Stephen Greer and probably many other people, I'm sure, many talented people. And they put together this program where you could be a part of it. Anybody can. You just got to download the app and find out how to connect with people. But I mean, I think it's incredible. I know, Mike, you're the one who put me onto it. So
well, it also has built-in meditations and whatnot, and you kind of scope out your area and see how many like-minded people there are, and you can like reach out to them directly or set up a group meet, stuff like that. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, we're gonna definitely be doing that in the near future. Me and Mike, and Heidi's in California, so it'll be tough to do one of these with her anytime soon. But I'm sure one day the opportunity will present itself. But Mike and I are going to seek this out. We're kind of fresh right into this CE5 program. Never even heard of it until I watched the documentary. So I'm really interested to see how far we can take this. I want to see if we can first of all, meet up with local people in our area, actually organize a meeting. And then, I mean, wouldn't it be incredible if we summoned a UFO and we had some kind of crazy like photographic evidence as a result of doing this? I think that's the whole purpose, right?
I would
Hopefully
say
there's
that
a good camera.
I would, or multiple, right? If different people have multiple, in the
Absolutely.
moment, 3 people who can verify. But it doesn't sound too far-fetched, because I know in Kabbalistic practices, there are ways to summon angels, specific angels.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
you have to go through certain rituals and meditation, and it's a process, and you have to be very careful, right? Because you're opening yourself up.
Yep.
And you have to shield and protect yourself. But I mean, my logic is if there are very old religions that know how to summon angels, why not be able to summon intelligent entity?
Well, Heidi, you keep taking this conversation. You keep taking this conversation exactly where I want to talk, because
Okay, good.
I think there's definitely a bridge that needs to be made between extraterrestrial life and what we call aliens, interdimensional beings, whatever you want to call them. There's that over there, and then there's the beings that have been pointed out to us through various forms of religion on the planet.
Mhm.
And call them angels, call them demons, jinn, what, there's so many different labels you could throw on that stuff. But like, let's just take angels, for instance. You see angels from the Bible, or I don't think they mention them in the Bible as much as people think, but there's plenty of other literature through like.
They are. They're 2 mentioned in the Bible, yes.
They are not as much. There's like some other texts that have been released where that's where they got most of their steam. But let's just take the angel, what everybody knows to be an angel over here. When you're seeing like ETs that are able to like phase in and out of dimensional reality and just pop up in a room and do this and that, you can assume that it's either a hologram or some kind of high level technology, or it's something like what we would think of as an angel that has they operate on such a higher frequency, a higher dimension. They're from like the 5th, 6th, 7th dimension. Who knows? I mean, we couldn't possibly like have an understanding with that unless you experience it for yourself. But if you're a 7th dimensional being, you probably don't have any trouble phasing in and out of time and space, wherever the hell you want. So I feel like the Bible is talking about those types of beings. And of course, if you're going to be a 7th dimensional being, you're probably pretty benevolent and loving and figured out the key to the universe somewhat. Like they're probably operating from a love heart space versus ego and anger.
And remember that the first 4 books of the Bible are from the Torah. And that is one of the areas where an angel is mentioned.
Yeah.
So I think it's Archangel Gabriel who's with Moses. I have to double check, but that would make sense because angels were very important in, ancient Jewish faith.
And they didn't know what aliens were back then. I mean, I highly doubt that all the people back then in the days of Moses and Jesus and all that stuff, they didn't know what angels were. They just, if they saw something, or aliens rather, they thought it was a god. Yeah, they thought it was God.
God, I thought it was a god.
Yeah, or they're receiving messages directly from God. I mean, it's like people who channel today. The channelers of today were the ones who wrote the scripture back then. They're the ones who got these visions and, and unfortunately their messages got distorted over time once, kings, queens, popes, politicians got a hold of this information and twisted it to their liking to help them maintain power and control. But let's not get too far off track. I think there's a bridge that needs to be, between the gap of aliens and angels. I think they're one and the same. It's just 2 different ways completely of thinking about it. And I'm sure there's plenty of alien life out there. Probably most of it that's interacting with us, I would say, probably has good intentions, is trying to help us. But of course, the government wants us to believe it to be something different. Look at all the movies and the television programs out there.
Well, you also got to factor. I mean, who's to say there's only one type of alien out there?
Oh no, there's plenty. I got a spreadsheet.
I'd like to believe there's a plethora of options there, and I bet you some of them are nice and some of them are bad.
I'd say I'd say probably most of them probably have good intentions for whatever reason. Like I hear a lot of the reptilian this and the reptilian that. I don't know. A lot of that stuff sounds hard to believe.
With the way the world is right now, I mean, why would they want to expose themselves to us? We can't even get along long enough to, to actually unite and whatnot. They probably don't want to have anything to do with that.
Well, no, they keep us divided, right? The whole goal, whatever's ruling this earth, it has a system in place which we're basically slaves. Maybe not as bad in the sense of like, the days of African Americans in the United States, or even the Jewish back in the days of Egypt and stuff like that. I mean, there's been plenty of times where people have been slaves in the worst possible way. But I think today we're a different kind of slave. We're economic slaves. We're slaves to a system which keeps us constantly working to satisfy some other higher echelon of humanity.
Well,
And the
yeah.
money stays in that
Capitalism.
little, what's that? Yeah, well, exactly. There's like all these people, like it's like 90% of America is like middle class or lower class. And there's only like less than 10%, less than 5% of millionaires and billionaires. That's a problem. Why does one man need $100 billion where there's people starving all over the place? I think that's the message the aliens are trying to teach us. Like, you should be taking care of your own. You shouldn't be letting your own fellow humans starve and live in such conditions. And, we're supposed to have compassion and empathy for one another.
Well, this is bringing up a much bigger topic about
Values.
and how people are conditioned from a very young age. I mean, if we are raised that being super busy and chasing your own tail and acquiring things of a lower vibration like money and getting things, and not actually slowing down and knowing how to go inward and to pray and to really know yourself, and also look at what gifts and purpose do you have while you're here so you can offer love and help to others. How many people actually take the time to do that, or are conditioned from a very young age to do that?
I wasn't.
Right?
I certainly wasn't. I mean, growing up, we weren't raised poorly. I mean, I thought we had a decent childhood, but I don't think anybody's raised to have that level of compassion and love for their fellow.
You're raised to survive.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. We're definitely raised to survive, and that's a accurate statement. Like, we need to start living our lives with more compassion and love for one another, because we're all the same. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're in the United States or China or Mexico or England. Like, we're all literally of the same spark. And I think that's like one of the messages that the friendly ETs, this is calling now, the friendly ones, want us to realize and love one another more because of that connection.
But I think it's also important, and I see this a lot in my astrology practice, is that people are awakening to dormant gifts they have in these higher vibrational gifts. People are waking up to, oh my gosh, I know what that person is thinking, or how did I know that my friend was in trouble, or they're interested in astrology, or they're interested in Reiki, or something that can heal someone else, or just bring them inner peace and comfort. Yes. And I'm seeing a lot more people contacting me saying, what the hell is happening to me, rather than contacting me and saying, what is my life's purpose and how can I make the most money? There's been a shift in why people are reaching out to psychics and astrologers, in my opinion.
No, you're right. I agree 100,000%. Dolores Cannon, for those of you watching who know about Dolores Cannon, she always talked about 3 waves of volunteers. And I won't go into the whole thing, but just know that the 3rd wave of volunteers that she references, that are people being born today during the dawning of the age of Aquarius, she's talking about healers, rainbow children, indigo kids, all of these like complete, like some of these souls, depending on what you believe in, some of these souls that are coming here, this is their first time incarnating on Earth, and they're taking skills and lessons from other solar systems and galaxies, who knows? But she's saying this is the first time a lot of these souls are being born here, and they are extremely talented healers. So what might be confused as a learning disability or some other like mental disability is actually just a kid who's a talented healer and who knows how to love on a whole nother level that we couldn't possibly understand.
I have, because my background's in education, I just finished, closing off my private tutoring business. And the last group of boys that I tutored, because I specialize in kids who have like autism or dyslexia or ADHD, they are so unique, and I am convinced, like, I'm actually not very worried for humanity in the future, because my children and their friends that I see, and these children, these very special children that I tutor, they are so inclusive and accepting of each other, and like they want to know about like gems and crystals, and they want to know about astrology, and they want to know how to get all the plastic out of the ocean. They want to invent something that makes the world a better place. And it's not just a few kids. It's like this new vibration with a lot of these children, but they're different. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're not the, and I think that this happens with the outer planets and astrology, is we get these different vibrational children. Like these, right now, I truly believe that there is a lot of Aquarian energy
Yeah.
occurring with these kids, and it makes them more humanitarian, more wanting equality, being of service to others and the planet. They are huge on environmentalism and equality for
As they
all,
should be. As they
as
should
it
be.
should be.
Yeah.
And so
Go
I
home.
completely agree with you, and I think that a lot of these kids are misunderstood, because we have an old system set in place to teach an older generation of children, and now we need something more inventive and forward thinking for this new generation of children that is coming onto the planet.
What it comes down to is creativity and how they get that outlet. And I feel it's true for everybody in the world. Everybody has some kind of form of releasing creativity that they're really, really talented at or good at, whether it's music, art, dance, who knows? There's just so many different ways of being creative. I think if everybody were able to find that, they would have a happier life, and it would allow them to express themselves more. That's one of the, like, I think that's one of the messages that I receive from both sides of the spectrum. Like like I do mediumship and psychic readings and whatnot, and, study mysticism. Like, I feel like on that side, everybody's basically just encouraging you to love and express yourself somehow, whether it's using your creativity or some other way of kind of just like letting the flow state be created. And I think the same thing with the alien stuff. I think they're trying to tell us similar things. They have like similar messages. That's why I think they're one and the same, and we just call them different labels. But at the end of the day, whatever you think to be, high level interdimensional beings are probably the same angels that were talked about in the religious texts.
Yeah, I agree. And getting back to your point with the creativity, I really think that there are periods in time in humanity where people are born that push concepts forward, like Einstein, like Mozart, right? Who would be considered on the spectrum in today's diagnostic,
Sure.
realm. So I think that part of our humanity is being challenged and pushed. And I'll tell you something. I mean, Pluto is going to be entering Aquarius in 2024. And I haven't really said this too much, but I strongly believe that I wouldn't be surprised if we discovered that there was an asteroid or something heading our way that we need to intercept.
Well, that's a big deal. Having
Yeah.
Pluto in Aquarius, in what house?
For the US, it'll be the third house, which would be, communication. It would be our elementary education system. It would be our immediate environment and driving things. But I would not be surprised that if we would discover in the next, say, 25, 30 years that something significant, you know what I mean? Maybe not something that would kill everybody off, but something that we would need to prepare for. Pluto and Aquarius, that's what I think of. I think, holy crap, I hope I'm wrong.
No,
but
you know what? I think the astrology is a tool, and we
yeah,
interpret it in any way we want. If you're like if you know a lot about it, you can come up with some pretty profound messages. And speaking of astrology, would you mind sharing a chart with us about the topic of like aliens and or extraterrestrials and what's going on in the world today?
Yeah, I found two similarities. So I looked at today's transits and progressions, and I went back when Roswell hit, like when the news on that hit, and it was pretty incredible, the similarity. So what do you want to see first, Mark? Do you want to see today's or Roswell?
Let's start with today.
Today, okay, all right. So here's today. And what I want to point out to everyone, which I think is pretty amazing, Let me get my drawing technique up here. Why do they make it so difficult sometimes? There we go. I think I got it. This is what I want to bring attention to. So this is Rahu. When you had asked me earlier, what would be alien news like for us? And to me, I instantly thought of Rahu, because Rahu is a lunar node. It's not actually a planet. It's a mathematical point in the chart. Okay, actually moves clockwise rather than counterclockwise like the planet. So it's going backwards. But I immediately thought of, I want to know what's going on with Uranus. I want to know what's going on with Rahu and with Aquarius. So this is pretty cool. In some schools of thought, the seventh house is a political house. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is the politicians, and Gemini is there. This is the US's chart, by the way. So this would be how the politicians think and communicate and who they are right here. But the house of communication for the US is Aquarius.
So we're far away from that. We're far away from effectively communicating.
Well, what I find interesting is that Saturn is here and it's squaring Uranus. Here it is in the sixth house. So this is why we're actually seeing some discussion and trying to change things in our daily lives with equality for people of color and for people, different, gender, and also for sexual preference. So we're seeing the change there, and also with police activity, like they're beginning to review things. We're having more cases that are bringing everything to light. But it's in Aquarius, which is the house of communication here. And this moon, which is the people, in some schools of thought, the moon are the people. This is trine this Uranus and this Rahu and the politicians. So the people are wanting the politicians to communicate about technology, Uranus, about things that are extreme, like aliens. Okay. So that's what's happening. At the same time, the nodes, the nodes for the US, the natal nodes are right here next to this progressed moon. So the nodes are kind of activating it natally too.
Yeah.
Now, is it going to happen? Maybe. We might hear something. To be perfectly honest, we might hear something when Rahu crosses Uranus here. See this?
Yep.
It's very close. We're at 10 degrees. And remember, it goes clockwise or counterclockwise. So it's going to go down. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's going to cross it, and we could hear something then, because at the same time, Mars has been really sluggish and really interfering with anything taking action because it's been in Cancer. But when a fiery planet enters that fiery sign and it crosses this node, it could activate action. And I can't believe I'm saying this. I haven't said this to anyone, but I'll say it on YouTube now.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to think that there's something to the ninth house and angels, or something having to do with outer space, other dimensions, because this is the house of religion, philosophy, morals, and values for Vedic astrology. And I consistently in my practice see people who are very connected to the angels have ninth house activity. So I think there's something with the ninth house about reaching those higher dimensions, which would be alien, right?
Yeah. I mean, it could be one and the same, right? Either religion, interdimensional beings trying to show us the truth. Who knows what it is? But I agree. It's something on that train of thought.
Exactly. And at the same time, we have Jupiter, who is going to be slowing down and going retrograde with Neptune here in the fourth house of the home. So this is in the US. So if there's going to be a free flow of communication, this would be the time where it would really start. And it could continue when Jupiter dips back into the third house of communication, because Jupiter expands and increases anything it goes into.
Yep.
So it just could expand the demand from the public that we want more, we want to know more.
Yeah.
But
And we do.
yeah, people do. And so here's what's so cool though, that I wanted to show you guys. So keep in mind, just want to keep your eyes on Rahu. And also keep in mind this ninth and third house communication that I told you about, because the next thing I want to show you, let's see here, is Roswell. Okay, so this is when the news, now remember, we're talking about news. It's not when, if something landed, right? If a spaceship landed, it's just like when Roswell hit. Remember what I told you about Rahu? Look where it's at.
It's in the same spot.
It's only 9 degrees away.
Okay.
It's already past this Uranus. It's already past the Uranus, okay? But Mars is there activating it. Remember I said when Mars, in the other chart, when Mars leaves and goes into the other house, but look who is conjunct in the ninth house, and it's communicating across the way to this third house. It's Saturn and Pluto. So this tells me that, and I'm going on a limb here, I know I'm going on a limb here, but if the ninth house is where we're looking for anything interstellar, higher dimension,
Yep.
Pluto is like, Pluto and Saturn, that's like an accident.
The great
Right.
activators, so to speak, when those
Well,
planets
no,
are in that house, they're ready to rock.
it's the modern planet of death, and it's the ancient, the traditional ruler of death. And so
Oh,
it could
shit.
be what that wasn't there. I mean, wasn't Roswell all about a spaceship crashing? Something crashed.
Yeah, but it's pretty sick. I mean, I think it was like the start
And
of
they
UFO culture in the United States. I think before that, people probably saw it in like texts and like on walls and Egyptian temples and stuff. But I think Roswell is what created what we
Well,
think to be aliens today. It was almost the
Yeah.
birth of something fucked up.
Yeah, well-
it was the birth of the pop culture alien
Yeah.
that we know of.
yeah. Well,
Ever since
remember,
then,
And they apparently found a spaceship, a body, the whole 9 yards, but no one's been able to prove it.
yeah,
Yeah,
ever since
so-
then, aliens have been labeled as invaders who are trying to like kill us all and take over our planet.
I genuinely believe that this is telling you that something transformative changed right
Yeah.
here, because remember what I said about Rahu being this kind of extreme point, like when you said show me in a chart where there could be aliens, I immediately thinking where's Rahu and where's Uranus.
I think it
Okay.
would be, I mean, I'm not telling you to do this or asking you to do this. I trust me, this seems like a lot of work, but I wonder if somebody's ever took all the major, ET events in the history, if anything that had a date at least, in trying to find some kind of correlation between them all. I've seen people do it with like, the timing of wars. Like you've done it with me and you have worked
Yeah.
together, and you put together like comparison charts, from the
Well, the
the
insurrection.
superstellium in Aquarius recently.
Yeah,
And I thought it was so fascinating because you found other instances in history that made sense as to why that superstellium is so important. So I'm
Right.
kind of curious to see what other, like if you were to take all of the major UFO events and put them on an astrology table to see I wonder how many things are lined up just perfectly for that to happen.
I know, I would agree, but I do think that we would want to look for Rahu. Where's Rahu? Where's Uranus? And what's going on in the ninth and the third house for the US. But I found it very, very fascinating that the transiting Rahu was only 9 degrees away from it is now. And it's a big deal. I mean, with these nodes, Mark, when they cross the ascendant and descendant lines, the horizons like this, it's a big deal. It's a big shift. And we have that coming with a Pluto return. It's a big deal when a Pluto return happens for a country. This was in 1947. This Pluto is right here, right now. It's about to cross and have a return. So something could even happen then.
It's like a confirmation that something important happened that day.
It is. It's total confirmation. When I see that and I see the similarities, I'm like, yeah, you can't deny that. You just can't deny that there's something happened. And you're transiting Uranus crossing natal Mars. That is, it had crossed. That is something shocking happening over the planet of, like energy. Mars can be accidents. It really can.
Yeah.
But it's also this combative planet. So I think it's very possible. But I just logically, I mean, I'd have to really look at this. But wow, this is cool. Jupiter is in the 12th house of secrets. So that also could be like something big happened, but
That's
we're
a
going to
big one,
keep
right?
a
That's a
secret.
pretty big secret.
This is a secret. Yeah. And it's in
That's a
Scorpio.
big secret, but it's like a secret that's been based on a lie. Because they've, like I said, ever since this day, I think is like when like Mike said, the pop culture idea of what aliens are was created.
Yeah.
And from then there are Martians or invaders and this and that. Like it was just all, so I think that makes sense. Having
Well,
that.
and you have the ruler of the ninth in the 8th house of also places that can be secrets and mysterious.
Yeah.
And that ruler of the 9th house is in trine with this Jupiter. So yes, something happened and it was kept secret internationally. It looks like everyone was involved. It doesn't look like it was just the US, but there was some
Nothing
international.
to see here. This is just a weather balloon. Like that had like two.
With our weather balloon over
inside of
here
it,
in England.
yeah, and if you get really deep into this stuff, you start learning about all the different alien races that are out there. Mike talked about earlier, there was like all these different ones instead of like one or two. And he's right. I have a spreadsheet from a remote viewer who's quite well known in the industry. Her name is Angela Thompson Smith, and she shared with me this like spreadsheet. And anybody can get it from her, by the way. I'm not special, but she shared this with me. And there's like 20 or 30 different species of aliens that she's contacted using remote viewing, which is ESP, which is a lot of these techniques that Dr. Stephen Greer is using is based on remote viewing. And this woman, he's reached all of these ETs using it.
If I were to guess when we would actually communicate with aliens, if it would happen, I would say when this progressed Pluto gets into Aquarius and because I mean, Pluto's no joke. When it enters a sign, it's in there for like a quarter of a century. It's in there for like 22 years.
So are you looking for like a clue, like some kind of thing on the Roswell chart? And then now you know what to look for in like future charts? Like when you see that same formation, you're like, oh shit, that's what Roswell did. Like, is that how it works?
Well, when Roswell happened, Pluto was all the way over here. And how the planets communicate across the chart to each other.
Yeah.
So when I see that Pluto and Saturn are about to go into the house of communication for the US, I think that's when we could hear I mean, it literally is transformative communication.
Yeah.
Something radically different that is going to change the way we think about communication.
Isn't Pluto one of the, I mean, granted, it's not a planet no more, or at least they don't consider it one, but.
Thank you, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Well, isn't it the only one that had a really wonky orbit around the sun? Like it was once a comet that just kind of got sucked in to the sun's gravitational pull.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I will tell you, I don't know enough about that, the astronomical history of it.
Well, it just sounds
man, that fucks everything up. When they took Pluto away,
wouldn't that be hard to read?
Well, what was that, Mike? One more time.
If it doesn't follow a set path, that'd be pretty hard to read, wouldn't it?
Well, but it doesn't. It's not. No, the answer is no.
Like, I know Pluto. Don't worry about me.
Well, because we have really, we follow what NASA has figured out. So we don't have to do the hard work. Does that make sense? I have this incredible program that does the thinking for me, so I can just interpret instead of, you're right. And in ancient times, you kind of had to know where it was and map it. And that's why a lot of these ancient astrologers lived in a hut in the middle of nowhere and were, these specialists that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They lived and breathed it because it took so much effort to be accurate.
Dude, these people, you know what? We're literally a bunch of morons compared to these people back
Yeah.
like 10,000 years ago. They were building like building after structure after structure after structure all along what's called the Magnetic Equator. And it starts in Easter Island, goes through Peru, goes across the Atlantic into like Cairo, Egypt, and all those areas, and different. I mean, and then it goes on through Cambodia and the Philippines. And on this magnetic equator are all the Easter Island statues, the pyramids, Machu Picchu. I mean, there's just endless, so many of them all along this parallel. And that shit, I forgot where I was going with that. No, but that's the astrology and things. They were building it off the stars. They were literally building these things off of the fucking stars. And they found that device. The device I was telling you about, that device like tied everything together, like all the different structures. Because these people were following the stars, the planets, the meanings of everything. And they built like literally down to the inches on all of these places. It's like that much in line. How the hell did they do that without having technology, supposedly?
Well, I mean, most of them have depictions about, outer, interdimensional beings or angels or aliens or whatever you want to call it. I mean, Easter Island, perfect example. Like their entire society ditched everything that they believed in just because a guy came out of the sky that looked like a bird, and that was their religion from there on out. Anyone that lived there, it's crazy. I guess they found some hieroglyphics down in some caves and whatnot, and stuff like that happened all over the place. I mean, there's pyramids everywhere. How did the hell that happen?
And some of them are separated by the civilizations were separated by thousands of years.
Yeah.
So it's not like there was one guy who just like traveled around the world saying, okay, you're building a pyramid, you're building a pyramid, no, these people were somehow connected. And
There's
I think
pyramids in every continent.
Yeah, oh yeah, every continent. And then that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would there be pyramids in every continent? And these things, I just promise you, it wasn't one person traveling around the world telling everybody to build pyramids. That just couldn't be it. There was a reason, there was a utility as to why the pyramids were built. There was definitely all of these structures. And what's interesting with the magnetic equator is it's along tectonic plates. So predictively, those are the worst places to have structures and major monuments, but they purposely put them there. These are the areas where there's all these earthquakes and all these mega disasters and stuff like that with the shifting of none of these structures have been affected by it, at least not like significantly, as far as I know. Most of them have been pretty good. None of them have been like falling apart. Like the pyramids would get split in friggin' half, you would think, if they got hit by an earthquake, but earthquakes don't hit there. It's just so amazing how they selected all these places in alignment, and each one was from a different astrological era.
Yeah,
like the kings and the rulers of Egypt, like if they were in the age of Taurus, they would actually there's a couple of examples. I think it's Leo. They're in the age of Leo, which explains why they have the Sphinx head as a lion.
Well, they also with the pyramids in Egypt were set up, I believe, on Orion's belt, weren't they?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Edgar Cayce says if you follow the right front paw of the Sphinx, right underneath it is the location of the Hall of Records that he talked about. According to Edgar Cayce, there's 2 locations of the Hall of Records, which includes all of the library that predates like Alexandria. Supposedly there was one in Alexandria, but it burned down, taking it with it. So there's only 2 left, and one of them supposedly is under the Sphinx. And this is basically the history of the Lemurians, the Atlanteans, everything that we do not know today, because there's no physical evidence of it anymore. And if it is out there, it's so deep, you have to dig down, or you got to find it somewhere. You're not going to find it on the surface, that's for sure. So I think once all these alignments mean something.
All right. So I would like to know what is going to happen May 2023. So we have transiting Pluto has entered the 3rd house of communication. Mars will be joining it. But look at the 6th house of everyday life. Something is going to change in how we deal with open enemies, or perhaps we're going to be, hopefully we don't, think aliens are open enemies, but this could be about something changing in our daily schedules. This is also the house of, it is a work house, has to do with work. But this is significant because it is going to form a grand cross, and it's going to be a fixed grand cross, which is going to talk about self-worth. So here we go. So that's what I think. I think in a couple of years,
That's a big formation right there. In other words, when you
it's
see
a
that
huge
formation,
formation.
shit's going down.
Yeah, and also we've got a nice sextile here, which is opportunity with Neptune. And that's Pluto and Neptune, which to me is really shifting and changing the values here in the States. So this could be something like more earthly, that is like a practical thing for people shifting, but it also could be also us, realizing that there are different beings that we need to learn to communicate with,
Yeah.
possibly. So I don't know. That's what I think, but I also think that in a couple of years we're going to experience some real change in our daily lives here in the States. But
I hope so.
Hopefully worldwide.
what's that?
Hopefully worldwide.
Possibly. But this is the US's chart, and
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
and I think that I do think that more secrets and things are going to come out from the past that are going to need to be changed. But the good news is that all this energy is going to end up in the 7th house, where the politics are and the relationships, and that's good. A lot of people, some astrologers are anticipating some type of shift or crash financially when Pluto has its return. But actually, I could be wrong about this, because Taurus is money. See, guys, right here, Taurus, 6th house.
Yep.
What if this is about changing how we spend our money in our daily life? Like, are we going crypto? Are we going to get rid of dollars and cents? Are we something's going to change on what the daily work life looks like and our daily routines. Something big is
financial sector.
Financial sector. This is a huge financial shift. And Pluto going into Aquarius means that something that is including everyone, but also very forward thinking, is going to get a huge boost. Like, we're going to have a change. Something is going to be forced to change. But to me, it also could mean that things are more open with aliens. So possibly.
I was just thinking this. What would be such a badass idea for like a tattoo? You find your ideal chart, or you find a chart that you want to happen in your life, right? Everything's in the perfect alignments it's like the stars are aligned for you to achieve this one thing, and you get it like kind of like how you have it here, and then just tattoo it on your arm. And that would be like something that you want to happen so bad, you got the damn tattoo for it. I don't know. I feel like some of these images are pretty beautiful. It almost reminds me of like water, when you see water vibrating and it does all those different shapes in the water.
Yeah.
Kind of looks like these are just the outlines of those patterns.
Well, and the really cool thing is that, you could show this to 5 different astrologers and they're all going to find something brilliant.
Yeah.
Because we're dealing with the universe, and it's like an onion. The more you pull back, the more you see. And what I'm sharing is, like, I'm looking at this for the first time, so I'm just giving very generic topical insights. But you give this to some very scholarly people, and my goodness, it can just turn into like a beautiful thing. But there's also something to be said about tattooing your own chart on you, because that's your divine blueprint from God.
Skewed.
Right? So that there's something beautiful in that. And granted, some charts are easier than others, but
you don't give yourself enough credit. I think you do a beautiful job of going through everything and giving people the right information, and you do a great job with that.
Well, thank you.
There's definitely so much you see that I could never imagine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I listen to my teacher and I listen to other astrologers. And I'm just like, okay, I'll be there someday. I'm working on it. But
I'm
thank
happy to be
you. I
working with
appreciate
you.
that.
You'll forget more about astrology than I'll ever learn.
Do you know what I just realized? What if, well, this would be very interesting. And Mark, I do need to look into the astrology of this. What if someone like Elon Musk, someone that society respects and trusts, comes out and just says, you know what? Screw and F this government. I have
All the
proof.
beans.
And here we go. And
Yeah.
let's have a discussion about this. I think that is very plausible. Just somebody amazing comes out. Like he's been very honest with people. You want to go to Mars? Okay, we're going. Like
Yeah.
we need to go
He
to Mars.
smoked
But
a
people are
joint
going to
with Joe
die. Be
Rogan, for
prepared.
God's sakes.
I think people trust that more. Of course, my favorite is when he puts the cameras on his rockets so the flat earthers can watch it go up and see the sphere.
That was awesome.
Um,
And I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was so badass that he put the guy from Heavy Metal, the spaceship, the car with the astronaut in
the
it, Heavy
roadster,
Metal
the
from the
roadster.
80s. I love the fact that he put that on the outside of it. So like the first thing you see is basically like he's got like a convertible driving with an astronaut. Like, can you imagine being the aliens that pull up on that? It just looks crazy.
Well, but see, he's somebody who didn't he come out saying I'm on Asperger's? I have Asperger's on
Yeah, you
SNL.
know what? He doesn't
He
bother me.
he is somebody who is pushing society forward,
Yeah.
pushing how we think forward. And I could see somebody like him going forward and just say, I am tired of everyone being lied to. I am tired of this bullshit, this bureaucracy. Let's have an open discussion because it's only going to better us as humanity. So
Yeah.
here we go. And I think that's more plausible before the government coming out and being
Oh,
honest.
sure. Because that's like the thing that Stephen Greer talks about too in that documentary I mentioned earlier, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. He says that the government's like jealous of the program that he's running because they're getting more results and it's a positive experience. Like the UFOs and the aliens and all, they want to communicate and work with those on the planet who have an open mind, an open heart, have good intentions. Those are the people that are going to get the furthest working with these beings. And the government approaching everything in the way they do, so hard nosed and straight laced, and it's also archaic and I think ineffective in many cases. They could take things too far to a whole nother level. It's all about national security. Who gives a shit about national security? There's a UFO like flying around your jet fighters every day, and you're doing
A lot of
nothing
people
to
care about
understand
national security, Mark.
Huh? Exactly. No, that's what
Just
they
a
say in the
little bit.
reports. When you read the reports, they always reference national security.
Yeah, it's important.
That's them. That's what they value over us understanding the truth, national security. And they have a position of power just to make that assertion that national security is more than telling us the truth. So,
Well, but I think enough people are pushing back and saying no. I mean, because society's
Yeah.
changing. Back then it was
but you know what?
the 1950s mentality that no longer exists.
It doesn't. And that's why Stephen Greer's work is so much more effective because I think they have positive intentions of what they're doing and they deserve the successes that they have found. The things that I've seen just from that documentary blew my mind. The government has to use force and cunning and manipulation to get what they want. And it's always, I don't know, with Stephen Greer, they're actually like having positive experiences. And he keeps saying over and over again in the documentary, or at least I heard it like 3 times, nobody has been harmed in any of their ET efforts to communicate. Efforts of ET communication. Nobody's been harmed. And he says it a couple times.
But so far, it's all just been visual, hasn't it?
Huh?
It's all just been visual at this point.
They have incredible photographic evidence. I mean, there's videos, there's pictures, but not only do they have videos and pictures of it in the sky, they have some instances where they captured it on the ground too, like beings within the group of people that were working together. Those are the ones that impressed me the most. There was one in particular where this guy I guess he had hearing issues. He was born with hearing issues and he wore aids basically all of his life from the way it made it sound in the documentary. And he went on to have an experience with one of these groups, and then at night, I guess they had like a cabin or something, or camping. At night, he heard something talking to him, so he left, and there was a red light. And then some other photographer got pictures of it when it was happening. But while the last thing he said to the being was, "Can you help me out with my hearing?" or something like that. And the next morning, he woke up, and his hearing was back to being like he could hear everything, and it was really emotional for him. And he's like literally crying in the documentary, like, this guy's spilling his guts about what happened to him and how profound it was, the experience. And it just leads me to believe that we all could have an experience like that if you attract it.
You know what I think of is I think of what we're doing on Mars, right? And how I can't think of how many rovers we have on there now as a collective, right, planet. And of course, this amazing helicopter. But wouldn't they just send things like that instead of themselves if they know we're so volatile? Do you know what I mean? Like
I think they do. I think they do in many cases. They're sending, like, it's probably either robotic. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of drones, right? Like, we consider drones. They probably send a ton of those out.
Yeah,
and also
forward observers.
Yeah, and also, like, those are just the alien species, let's call them, that require it. There's some of them out there that don't even need that. They just phase in and out of reality around us.
Oh wow!
And I think that's where those anomalies come from, like with the whole triangles, like Skywalker Ranch or Skinwalker Ranch, like Bermuda Triangle. I think these are just areas where they kind of phase in and out. Because I mean, most of the time they just appear and reappear, or they go into the water and they're going the same speed. But you don't ever really see them going in and out of the atmosphere. You just see them appear, do the thing, and all of a sudden they're gone.
What is Skinwalker Ranch? I'd never heard of that before.
It's a ranch in Utah that I guess I'm not quite sure how long it's been around. It might just be as early as the early 1900s, but they had some instances there with higher levels of radiation. They've had UFO sightings, just cattle mutilations, just weird things happening to like electronics and whatnot. It's had different owners over the years. They went from the government and then to this guy named Bigelow, or I could have got those two mixed up. But right now there's some really rich guy that owns it, and he's got a TV show based around it. And
there's one thing you said there that indicates to me that is a false flag situation there. When you start talking about the cow mutilations.
Well, that happens all over the place. That's just
wherever that happens, that's not the ETs. That's the perception the government wants us to believe. It's probably the government doing like that weird shit with the mutilation.
Well, not necessarily. If you watch the show, they'll show certain instances where maybe a cow died and they have no idea why it died. It's laying there. There's like nothing wrong with it at all. But then they'll leave it in the same exact spot for the entire time, and it'll completely deteriorate, but nothing else would touch it.
Yeah,
like it would just leave it right there. Or there would be some cases where like every drop of blood was sucked out of this thing and everything is absolutely fine. Like there ain't no puncture wounds anywhere. There's some really weird stuff going on over there. I mean,
that's the thing, Mike. I don't think
I'm still a skeptic myself, but
the mutilation,
I'm definitely gonna watch still.
The mutilations in particular don't make any sense to me. Like, why would a fifth?
That's not the only thing going on.
Being want to rip apart a cow or drain the blood of a cow? It makes me feel like there's somebody who's trying to tell a story there, like with intentions, with manipulation.
Maybe they're generally interested.
What about the crops? What about what is it called?
Crop circles and stuff.
I think that's the Close Encounters of the Second Time, if I remember correctly. It's basically whenever you see a UFO and it leaves behind like a physical imprint, whether it's bending down, fields or burning it, one of the two, and they do it in means where you can't recreate them. I mean, that's interesting to me because they're not really destroying as much as like they're just leaving their mark. I don't think it's bad. They're not like targeting, killing people and stuff like that. I don't know. It's such a hard conversation for me because I sincerely believe that the ones that rely on less technology are probably the better ones. The ones that are going to try to help us and do good things. The ones that rely more on technology are the ones that probably aren't in alignment with a lot of this stuff. I feel like they're more logic, ego, strength, masculinity, that kind of stuff. Whereas the right side is more of the feminine, creative, loving energy.
So I have a question. are there more alien the UFO sightings, right? Because it seems like every night there's somebody
Oh, yeah.
somewhere posting
way
something
more.
crazy. Are there more sightings, or is the technology more like everyone has
Both.
a very
Everybody's
good
cameras now.
camera now?
Yeah.
So are there more sightings, or just everyone now has a device to record their experience and to put it on a platform that's available to 8 billion, let's say 5 billion people?
It's got to be both. There's no guessing. I think it's got to be both. It's got to be exactly what you're saying. Like the technology has obviously gotten much better, and I think people,
I think
because of
interest is there.
technology, they have a different understanding of it. Like now, if you ask some dude in the 1800s, like, "Hey, what is that?" He wouldn't even know what to think. He wouldn't even have a name for it. They didn't, not aliens or Martians. I don't know what they call them back then. But yeah, I think technology got better, and now everybody's documenting and sharing, and pop culture gets
So
created.
Mike, you think there's more of an interest? Because
Absolutely. Yeah,
some of these videos I see, people are like living their lives and they're going, well, what the hell is that over there? Like, do you know what I mean?
have you guys seen the recent Starlink video?
Yeah.
It looks like there's a Star Wars Imperial cruiser going by in the sky, and it's just a straight line of lights. And when you're first looking at it, you're like, what is that? But the hilarious part about the video was the people like recording, and they're losing their mind. They're like, oh my god, the aliens are here. They're losing their mind, and it was absolutely great. But all it was Starlink. If you look up online, you can find it, and I think it spans from like Ohio to Connecticut. Like that's how long it is, and it's just a series of satellites, right?
Yeah. The first time I saw the video, it looked pretty creepy. I'm not gonna lie. And then I found out it was Starlink, and I'm like, oh well, that makes sense. But still, it's
But
funny and still to watch.
but people are very much interested. I mean, obviously, we've already said in a number of different countries, there's more and more videos. There's more and more proof and whatnot. So there's definitely an interest there. I don't know how the world would take it as a whole, though. I mean, I think you still have a lot of people that want to see it, but I think you still have more people that would be scared.
Yeah. No, I
So,
hear you. There's some people that just don't even care. They don't want to know. They just want to continue their life. This kind of shit.
I'm
It's
just
too much.
wondering, I'm just wondering if I am a very intelligent species, right, that's come to help us. Am I going to reach out to a government, or am I going to reach out to people who can actually do something? Do you know what I mean?
Actually help you and do something good with it.
I don't know. I don't know. So
Yeah, I
I
wouldn't be
don't.
calling the
It's also new to me.
FBI. I don't know. I feel like if I told them, they'd be up my ass and they'd want to know everything. I'd rather share it with the world than tell them.
yeah. Well, there
Or
are
getting on
people currently actively doing that too.
Yeah. But there are some people who do work with the government. I'm sure not all bad. I'm sure there's good ones there, like any other organization. I just think overall, there's been a lot of failures, and the truth has been hidden from us. So I consider that a catastrophic failure.